What do you see in your sectors?
Well, we definitely are seeing that the tech sector, the way that softness is manifested has shifted over the year, because at the start of this year, we saw this big wave of layoffs at companies large and small in the tech sector. But now it's more about that softness in hiring, the difficulty in some of those laid off workers from finding new jobs. And in fact, this is something we see reflected in how employees are talking about the tech sector. We've seen that employee confidence in the tech sector, as measured on Glassdoor, is actually below 50%. That means that under 50% of tech employees actually have a positive business outlook for their employers.
Wow.
That's not really a great situation to be in for the industry.
Can you give demographics on that, regions on that, the kinds of people who are nervous here?
Well, generally speaking, entry-level workers tend to be a little bit less confident than, say, executives. And when you think about that, that totally makes sense. But I think one interesting cut of that is actually middle managers have seen a pretty dramatic decline in their business confidence as well. I think part of that might be because you look at companies that are cutting costs. Well, a lot of that pressure falls on middle managers who have to enact these cost-cutting measures at the same time, doing more with less as they try to get those costs under control.
How much is flexibility or a lack thereof bearing weight at the moment? It's interesting that we're worried about participation rates in women. We've actually seen that recover, now perhaps pull back a little bit. There's a lot of talk within the tech sector in particular that we want you back in the office, and that impacts certain people more than others.
Well, definitely we know that flexibility is a really appealing feature for jobs beyond the tech sector for really everybody. And of course, it manifests in different ways. It might be flexible work arrangements in terms of location or in terms of hours, but it is absolutely something that we see employees care a lot about, job seekers care a lot about, but we are also seeing that a lot of employers are pulling back on those options as they really try to get costs under control and try to be as productive as possible. But on the flip side, you know, the evidence, I think, is mixed there. There are a lot of employers who are getting by just fine in those flexible work arrangements. So it's really up to employers to figure out what the best way is to manage their workforce.
Now, we have seen really the oxygen within technology space just been sucked out of the room by artificial intelligence. What is happening from a training perspective? What is happening from job openings and whether or not companies can fill those job openings for AI within their own labor force as it exists, or are they having to reshuffle the benches a little bit here?
I think that's a great question. I think it's a little bit early to say because all of these new generative AI tools are pretty new, and a lot of companies still haven't figured out exactly how to use them. They haven't figured out what their strategy should be for using and experimenting with these tools. So I think right now we're just seeing a lot of experimentation, and there aren't really a lot of firm plans in place. But I think that training is a really great way that employers can reward the loyal employees that they have by giving them opportunities for career growth and skill development, and really get access to a pool of talent that offers them a lot.
Wage growth slowing from a macro perspective in the jobs data, 4.2% year over year. What are wages looking like in the tech sector?
Well, in the tech sector, we are seeing that wages aren't necessarily falling, but they're more stagnant year over year. And I think that also it's important to keep in mind that compensation is not just about your base salary, right? It includes, especially in the tech sector, it includes bonuses, it includes equity, and that is a place where we have seen a little bit of a pullback. So it's not necessarily that people are getting their bonuses cut or their equity packages cut, but when they're looking for a new job, well, maybe the size of the package that they can actually demand is not as large as it might have been a year or two ago.
What signals now do you look to? Like, you're measuring sentiment, which seems to be on the downside. Where do you look next? Because many in the macro perspective are thinking that this jobs market has to eventually start to cool, even though it defies that every single month, it feels like.
Well, I think it is important to see that marriage of hard and soft data together, because we do see that the hard data is looking really healthy for the job market. In fact, almost shockingly healthy compared to what we were thinking coming into the year. But I think it is really important to look at that sentiment data, especially as we look at how employees feel, because who knows businesses better than their employees who are on the front lines every day, who are interacting with customers, actually seeing how the business is operating. That's why we think you can't discount these soft sentiment indicators.